We'll do the same thing for the extensors. So we're looking at the pattern of flexion now and return to neutral to evaluate extensor muscle control. And ideally, you want the person to do this obviously under anti-gravity position, and ideally that would be 4-point kneeling, although it's not liked by everybody. So if the person can't get into 4-point kneeling or is uncomfortable in that position, of course you could test this in prone on elbows. You could also test it leaning forward over the plinth or over a table. But the idea is to ensure that there is some degree of gravity working on the extensor, the neck, to ensure that you are evaluating extensor muscle control. But here, very simply, the patient is asked to look into flexion, bring their head and neck down into flexion and to come back to neutral. And remember again, what we're particularly interested in is the quality of the movement. Where is the movement initiated? Because that will tell us which muscles are controlling the movement. Okay, so in an ideal scenario, what we should see is that they start from neutral. As they're lowering into flexion, the movement starts at the top of their head and progressively moves down to the base of the neck. And when they're coming back from flexion, it's the opposite, right? So the movement should start at the base of the neck, and then they correct the neck and the head comes up at the very end. So that would be considered the normal kinematics of the movement. What you will see most commonly in people where there's neck extensor muscle weakness is particularly in the return phase when they come back from flexion towards the neutral position, rather than controlling their neck with their deep neck extensors like semispinalis cervicis, they rely on the larger head extensor muscles like semispinalis capitis or splenius capitis. And that means that rather than the neck moving first, it's the head that moves first, and they tend to poke their chin out, poke their chin out on the return from that movement. And that's again because of that dominant activity of the larger, more superficial muscles. And again, this is just a first assessment, so we haven't finished yet. We're going to do some specific muscle testing later on to confirm our suspicion that there is weakness in the deep neck extensors if they are performing their movement in that way. So let's have a look again at some videos. So this is the same guy from before who, when we look at his neck movement, it looks quite fine. He's able to do the correct sequence of movement. He's able to move his neck. He's keeping his head keeping his head relatively still. So let me try that again. Keeping his head still relative to his neck until that end of movement. And that's what we're hoping to see. If, however, we look at the same lady that we looked at before and we ask her to do the movement, we can see even before she moves, so much superficial activity, even just to be in that position. But more importantly, what we can see is that when she comes back from flexion, what she's doing is extending her head. She's not extending her neck. And if I manage to pause it in the right place there, you can see that her neck is still in flexion. Okay, so she's using a lot of head extensor muscles, even her trapezius, upper trapezius there, engage to pull her head forward back into that starting position. That is not the correct sequence of movements that we'd like to see, and that gives us a suspicion that she would also benefit from exercises targeting her deep neck extensors, which again we're going to confirm with our specific muscle testing very soon.